For a while, no one seemed to know what would happen to us. I remember hearing the grown-ups talking in hushed voices. They thought I would probably go live with Samuel Rose, the man who was my biological father. Instead, life took another unexpected turn. The Cobb family adopted my little brother, Philip. As for me, I was sent to live with Uncle Edward. Looking back now, I believe God placed me there exactly when I needed it most. After everything I had witnessed, after all the fear, after losing my mother, Uncle Edward's home became a place where I could finally breathe again. He was patient with me. He didn't expect me to have all the answers. He simply gave me what every frightened little boy needs: a place to belong. For a little while, life felt steady again. Then, one afternoon, everything changed. Russell Porterfield arrived. The man listed on my birth certificate. The man the law recognized as my father. I didn't know what to think. Part of me knew him. Part of me barely remembered him. The adults talked for what seemed like hours. I couldn't hear everything they said. I only knew their voices were serious. When the conversation ended, I was told I would be leaving with Russell. I didn't get to choose. I simply packed the few things that belonged to me and climbed into his car. As we drove away, I watched Uncle Edward's house disappear behind us. It felt like I was losing another home, another family, another piece of the life I was just beginning to understand. Russell took me to Redland, Alabama, in Elmore County. Everything was different. The roads, the fields, the people, even the air smelled different. I didn't know what waited for me there. But the moment I met my grandmother, everything softened. Everyone called her Medea. Her name was Betty Porterfield. She welcomed me with open arms and a love so genuine that, for the first time in a long while, I felt safe. Her house wasn't fancy, but it was filled with something far more valuable: family. Old photographs covered the walls. Stories seemed to live in every room. Every chair, every quilt, every worn piece of furniture carried memories of the generations who had come before me. Medea had a way of making you feel like you mattered. When she hugged me, it felt like all the broken pieces inside me finally had a place to rest. For a little while, I thought maybe this would become my forever home. Then life changed again. Medea became very sick. She was no longer able to care for me. So I moved into the home of Uncle Bruh, whose real name was James Porterfield, and his wife, Aunt Honey. Another house, another bed, and another family to learn. By then, I was getting used to starting over. Life on Uncle Bruh's farm was different from anything I had known before. There was always work to do. Before the sun climbed high into the Alabama sky, chores were already waiting. Before I could go to school, I had to feed the animals. And when I came back, I had to work in the fields. The work was hard, and Uncle Bruh was hard. But it taught me responsibility. And without realizing it, it was teaching me resilience. Eventually, Medea recovered. My heart was filled with hope. I thought I would finally be going back to live with her, but it didn't work out that way. As I grew older, I began looking back on those years through different eyes. As a little boy, I simply thought life kept moving me from one house to another. But as a man, I started asking myself why. The answers weren't always easy to accept. I came to realize that, for a time, I felt like no one really wanted me. Uncle Edward took me in because the family didn't want me going to live with Samuel Rose, my biological father. By then, Samuel was married and raising 3 children of his own. Bringing another child into his home would have changed everything for his family. Russell Porterfield came and claimed me because, in the eyes of the law, he was my father. He took me without argument, without a fight from anyone. Then there was Uncle Bruh, James Porterfield. As I grew older, I understood why he kept me. Life on the sharecropper's farm was hard. There was always another row to hoe, another fence to mend, another field waiting to be worked. An extra pair of hands meant one less person to hire. I was that extra pair of hands. There was another truth I couldn't see as a child. Every time Uncle Bruh looked at me, he saw the face of Samuel Rose. I looked so much like my biological father that I became a living reminder of a painful chapter in our family's history. As a boy, I wondered why I never seemed to have one place that truly felt like home. As a man, I realized it wasn't because people hated me. It was because every adult around me was carrying burdens of their own. Some were trying to protect me. Some were doing what they believed was their duty. Some were simply trying to survive. But a little boy doesn't understand complicated reasons. He only knows how it feels. And many nights, it felt like I belonged everywhere and nowhere at all at the same time. Looking back now, I can finally see what that frightened little boy couldn't. Even when life made me feel unwanted, God never abandoned me. He carried me through people who were imperfect, people who made difficult decisions, people who loved me the best way they knew how. I didn't always understand his plan, but he never stopped watching over me. When I was 13, life surprised me again. By then, hard work had become part of who I was. From sunup to sundown, there was always something that needed to be done on the farm. That particular day, I was out in the field baling hay. The heat from the sun was relentless. Every breath carried the smell of fresh cut hay, and sweat soaked through my shirt long before noon. I wasn't a big kid. In fact, I was skinny as a rail. My arms weren't much to look at, but I worked as hard as anyone else. That didn't stop some folks from making fun of me. A young kid working nearby watched me struggle with one of the heavy bales. He laughed. Then he shook his head.
Boy, you're about the skinniest thing I've ever seen.
The others chuckled. I tried to ignore him. I bent down, grabbed another bale, and kept working. That only encouraged him.
You call that working? I've seen a lot of stronger boys than you.
His words stung. Not because they were new, because I'd heard comments like that before, but after everything life had already taken from me. Sometimes even small insults felt heavy. I lowered my head and kept working. Then, a voice I had never heard before cut across the field. It was older, stronger, and filled with authority.
Hey, boy.
Everything stopped. The teasing stopped. The laughter stopped. Even I stopped what I was doing. The older man stepped closer and looked directly at the boy who had been mocking me.
You ought to be ashamed of yourself.
He pointed toward the boy.
Don't you ever talk about your brother like that.
I froze. What? My brother? I slowly looked around. Surely he wasn't talking about me. I didn't have a brother here. At least, not that I knew of. The young man looked just as confused as I was. Then our eyes met. For several long seconds, neither of us spoke. Something about him seemed strangely familiar. I couldn't explain it. Finally, I found my voice. Who are you? The young kid smiled. There was kindness in his eyes. the same brown eyes I remembered seeing in my mother's face.
My name is Philip Cobb.
My heart skipped a beat. He took one slow step toward me. I'm Billy Joe. I'm your brother. The world seemed to stand still. The little boy I had last seen when he was barely 2 years old was now standing right in front of me. For a moment, neither of us knew what to say. Then we closed the distance between us. We wrapped our arms around each other. Years of separation disappeared in a single embrace. We laughed. Then we cried. Neither of us cared who saw. There are moments in life when words aren't enough. This was one of them. When we finally sat down beneath the shade of a nearby tree, we spent hours talking. We filled in the missing years. He told me about his life. I told him about mine. We spoke about our mother, about the people who had raised us, about the roads life had taken us down since that terrible day at Aunt Drew's house. The more we talked, the more I realized something. Time had separated us, but it had never erased the bond we shared. We were still brothers. Nothing could change that. Looking back now, I understand that family isn't measured by the number of years you spend together. Instead, it's measured by the connection that remains when those years have passed. Time can separate people. Distance can silence conversations. And life can scatter families in directions they never expected to go. But love has a remarkable way of finding its way back home. That day, in the middle of a hayfield under the hot Alabama sun, God gave me back a piece of my family I thought I had lost forever. And I'll never forget the words that made it all possible.
Hey, boy, don't you ever talk about your brother like that.